Welcome to Flight Club, a podcast where we want to dive into specific aspects of flight levels, share experiences, and introduce you to the flight levels experts on a more personal level.
Hello and welcome to the Flight Club by Flight Levels Academy, where you get to know people and topics around flight levels. My name is Klaus Leopold, and my guest today is Jean-Paul Bayley, or JP, as we call him for short. And we want to chat about how flight levels is not just a thinking tool, but it's also a model for communication and learning. That's what we want to talk about. So, hi, JP. Thanks that you spent some time with me here.
It's my pleasure, Klaus. Good to be here.
Perfect. I'm super excited to have you on this show. And before we start with our topic, I would like to know a little bit more about you. I mean, we know us for quite a long time, actually, for years. But still, I'm quite sure that I don't know everything about you. So what do you actually do for a living? So how would you describe what you're doing for a living?
Yeah, my kids always ask me this, and I never have a great answer for them. So try, but I guess the best way of describing what I do is I help organizations kind of execute their plans by giving them tools to learn and improve, and in that way develop agility. So that's I'm trying to avoid using buzzwords. I got one in there at the end, but yeah, that's the short version.
Okay, so helping organizations to build up learning capabilities, and there was this agile word in it. Well, you weren't born like this, I guess, right? So, what led you to this place where you currently are?
Well, so, I mean, I had a brief spell. This has nothing to do with what I do now, but I had a brief spell after university of actually being a DJ in having a recording studio. But that was only very short-lived. Then I got a proper job. I started out as a software engineer, as I think a lot of us did, and I did that for quite a few years. And after maybe about 15 years or so of doing that, getting to point of being an engineering manager and observing projects work, projects not work, what helped people do better, what hindered people. I ended up running into my business partner now, Jose Casal, and just through a mutual love of facilitation, actually, is what we first got into. Kind of met each other through. Anyway, I started freelancing, and Jose pointed me in the direction of something called Training from the Back of the Room, which is a book by Sharon Bowman. And I ended up going off and doing some training in that. And also, during this time, I started learning about Kanban from Jose. I'd been practicing it a little bit in working with teams. Jose kind of took it to another level. And actually, he also introduced me to flight levels. So that's how you come into the equation. And I think so the first time we met, we kind of met slightly, I think, at a Lean Kanban Central Europe. But the first time we had any proper conversations, I think, was in Barcelona at your Enterprise Kanban coach.
Yes. EKC it was called back then. So this was kind of like the thing what we would call Flight Levels Coach these days, the Flight Levels Coach program. Yeah.
Man, I was just well, it's kind of pre-pandemic, that wasn't it? So
yes.
Then when the Flight Levels Academy launched, that was when we were in London running. You were running the class that, were you calling it FLSA then? I think it certainly became FLSA. If it was.
Yes, exactly. So I guess it was the flight levels training back then. So that's something what we know today as FLSA, I guess, flight level systems architecture, or many parts of it were in there. Yes, when was this actually? It was in London, I remember. It was one of the
2019. I think it's September 2019 is when that happened. And then obviously COVID kicked in, and that kind of moved everything in a different direction. But we're still working today with Jose. We use Kanban with teams, and flight levels is a really important part of what we do with helping companies and specifically around getting continuous learning into the organizations, using flight levels
Yeah.
as a tool for that.
Cool. So you discovered flight levels, yeah, with Jose, and then you decided to dive deeper into flight levels. I mean, you're also a flight levels guide with Flight Levels Academy, so this is actually quite a lot of commitment when you decide to go this way. So why did you decide to dive deeper or fly higher with flight levels, actually?
Um, when it was first explained to me, it struck me that it resonated on so many levels, because uh, it was just it just felt like a really good fit for the way that organizations work. And then when I started explaining it to people, it felt like a very natural way of describing what happens in companies, and helping people see what is happening in their companies. And that was the main reason for it. It's everybody I've ever had a conversation with about flight levels, even when I haven't used the phrase flight levels, I've just described, you've got these different layers of your organization that are operating in various different ways. They have these real kind of penny drop moments where uh, they have these kind of, oh, suddenly I see where the problem is, or that's really interesting because these two bits are not communicating with each other. And just those kinds of conversations are really insightful. And it doesn't take a lot of effort to start getting those insights. To make it into something afterwards takes an awful lot of effort, but just that initial, hold on a second, that's what's going on. It's just a brilliant model for communicating that.
That sounds like when you say the penny drop, this sounds like there was a learning moment going on, right? So
yeah. So it's a phrase in English which means that. Yes, exactly. It's just kind of like, yeah, okay, aha, I've had that. The light bulb goes off. How do I want to describe it? Yeah.
Yeah, so why am I highlighting this? Because in the beginning you said, okay, the topic is about why flight levels is more than a thinking model. So it's also yeah, a model which helps organization to learn. So honestly, I don't know what flight levels is. I mean, I have a vague idea. I call it's a thinking model, but yes, you are right. It's not only thinking. I mean, you're also doing kind of things with flight levels, hopefully. And thinking sounds like someone is sitting in the corner and waiting for an aha moment or something like this. But it's way more active, actually. And I really like what you said. Like there was this penny drop, so there was like a learning moment going on, and that's what I see quite often when I mean. Flight levels is not rocket science. It's all about these three levels, the five activities, and you start the conversation and then some learning happens. So it is not a kind of framework or method that you are somehow, I don't know, installing in your organization. It is something else. So why do you highlight this learning aspect?
Okay. Well, because for me, actually, I think I'll kind of wind it back a little bit. One of the things that we want people to have is happy, successful happy, successful organizations that so people enjoy their work, they find meaning in their work, and the organizations that they work in are successful. I'm using the phrase organization, not business, because there's more to life than businesses, right? So if you're working in a charity, you're working for a government, whatever, being successful at what you do can have lots of different meanings. For those things to take place, there are three things that you really need for me. One of those is being able to kind of respond to changes in the conditions around you. So that can be market conditions, it can be operating conditions. The other is, well, having the capability to execute what you need to do to hit towards your goals. And the final point of that is learning, because I don't think you can do the previous two unless you're able to learn. And fundamentally, when we talk about agility, we often talk about iterative doing things in an iterative way. We often talk about doing things, well, inspect and adapt is the classic one that gets rolled out. Well, what's that really about? I mean, the adaptation, there's a learning step that's happened in there. If we've got a feedback loop, there's a learning step that happens in there. And oftentimes, I think when people talk about these things, they talk about the kind of what aspects of it. And a lot of people get stuck in the what aspects of it. So you must have an event that happens once a day where people are having a conversation about aligning themselves, for example. Well, why? Right. So it's, so they can learn along the way and get better and improve. So yeah, and that's why the learning part of it is so important to me. And I think Flight Levels does a brilliant job of that because it joins all the different parts of the organization together in a series of feedback loops, which allows learning to happen at multiple levels.
I like this a lot. I like this a lot. So when we talk about agility, then it means that we are kind of adapting what we are doing to given circumstances. So in German, there's this very, or in Austrian German, there's this very nice word which says situationselastisch, which is like situational elastic. So when a situation is changed, you need to do something different. But the thing is, you don't know all the things that you have to do beforehand. And this is also like when something doesn't go as planned, we need to adapt the way what we are doing, and this is also the opportunity to learn. Is this what you meant somehow?
Yeah, because I think sometimes when we get ourselves really busy, then we have that elasticity, but then we end up having to reuse that and relearn it every single time, rather than going, well, let's take a pause. How do we stop that from happening again? Or if it does happen again, what is our process for dealing with that? So, a great example of dealing with this is actually blocker clustering, which you kind of came up with and published all those years ago. But oftentimes, when something gets in our way, we don't really take a moment to think, well, why is that getting in our way? Let's do a bit of analysis. Let's stop that happening. Or if it does happen, let's understand how we're going to deal with it or cater for it within our way of working. So yeah, I mean, it's all of those things.
And I think that's really where Flight Levels is different. So Flight Levels, I think learning starts from the first minute on. So Flight Levels doesn't say, okay, this is, I don't know, the things you have to do, incorporate these things in your daily doing. So just like blindly execute these practices or something like this. You're always challenged to think for yourself, to take your own decisions, and together we somehow try to build a realm where learning is somehow possible. So we have some ideas, we have seen things that work by other organizations, but we throw these kind of things in, but people need to basically mix and match and do their own things out of it. So this is also, so I don't know how to say it, but it feels like that the learning process is not like, okay, these are the 10 rules. It's really like you are learning how your organization actually works, and you're learning to take the right decisions for you. So I'm, as a Flight Levels guide, I'm not taking your decisions. You are making your decisions. And this is in the learn environment. I don't know if this is too abstract, but does this somehow make sense?
Yeah, I mean, but so let's kind of look at it a little bit more concretely. I mean, one of the things that we do is visualizing a situation, and just even in the process of doing that, I've lost count of the number of times I've spoken with, either one-to-one or in groups with people where with clients, and you're saying, okay, so what's happening, and you'll get 5 different versions of the same thing. And then when you say, well, hold on, what's going on here? You suddenly realize that everybody's been using the same words to talk about a different process or talk about a different type of work. And then they wonder why everyone gets frustrated with each other because, I mean, let's just take an example. let's just say someone's talking about a marketing campaign, right? So you've got the sales team are saying, okay, right, well, we're going to need a marketing campaign because of this. Can you go off and do that? But their idea of what a marketing campaign is defined completely differently in the marketing department. And the marketing
Mm.
department, this is like months and months and months of work. It's going to keep the whole department completely maxed out. So they drop everything else and start working on the marketing campaign. Whereas actually what the salesperson was after was maybe, something a fraction the size. They just haven't clarified it because, maybe they're not having the right conversation, or maybe they're just firing a ticket into a system, or it's just an email or something. The moment you get
Yeah.
everybody in the room and they start having a conversation and they start just defining what these things are. So one of the things that we do is mapping out the flow of how work moves through the system, how it decomposes, flight routes and flight items and all those good things that we do. Suddenly people are going, well, hold on a second, that doesn't enter there. And actually that doesn't break down like that. And the people who are on the other side of it are going, well, what do you mean? No, of course it does like that. That's exactly how it works. And you
Yeah.
suddenly realize that they've got a complete mismatch in how they're communicating. So
Mm.
just even that simple step is a massive leap in learning. So, going back to the whole, yes, it is a thinking model and learning communication. The thinking is you can go at it
Yes.
and have a look at the various different aspects and go, okay, so I think that's how it works. But you've still
Mm.
got to communicate that with people and then learn whether that's true. And we
Yeah.
always talk about that. You don't go, here is your flight level 2, and
Have fun.
I've done it for you. It's a collaborative
Yes.
process, and you might have various different versions of it before you get an agreed one.
Yeah, and you're never done. So that's the other thing. So this learning journey never stops. So
Yeah,
it's, I mean, we always coin the phrase like the latest state of misunderstanding. So whenever you see a flight level 2 system, that's the example you just made. It's the latest state of misunderstanding. But then everything changes somehow, and again, you are learning and you are adapting. And the thing is, it's hypothesis. If you do not change your flight level 2 system, your flight level 3 system, you probably didn't learn. Because the change is actually the action that follows after a learning process, right? Mm-hmm.
absolutely. And
So
I think that's one key indicator of um, whether a company is succeeding in doing what it's doing is if you kind of have helped set things up, you go away for a period of time and then come back, things have got to have changed. If everything's
yeah,
exactly the same as you left, then unfortunately more work needs to be done to get things,
yeah,
that engine of change and learning going.
yeah. So you are a fan of the learning organization. That's what I somehow hear when I hear you talking. I remember there was a book, I guess it was published in 1990 already, from Peter Sanger, The Fifth Discipline. And this was my first contact to at least the term a
Mhm.
learning organization. So 1990, 90. This is 1 or 2 years ago already. Um, so, I mean, why is this topic still a topic? Why isn't it off the table? Why isn't it solved? Well, I mean, we are talking for so long about this topic, but it's an evergreen kind of. What is
I,
the problem?
well, I think something that we always run into, and I'm sure you run into this all the time, Klaus, is people who approach running a business in terms of resource utilization. So,
Hmm.
you know, we we are spending X on all of these people, and so we want them busy as hell because we want to get the
Yeah,
value for money out of X. And I mean, I guess there's a logic there that stands to
sure.
reason. It's the way we were brought up. If you're spending money, you want to make sure you get value for money. The the challenge here is well, is that actually value? And if you've got everyone being really busy, and creating a lot of waste because they'd have to do the same thing over and over again, they're not having the opportunity to learn. they're maxed out all the time. They don't have those learning opportunities. And, we see time and time again when we're working with people that everyone's just too busy to build a learning organization. And the moment you start talking about building in slack time and making sure that people are not giving estimates which are based on an 8-hour working day of working 8 hours solidly, because people don't do email, have a coffee, toilet breaks, all the rest of it. That doesn't happen, right? Never mind those conversations you've got to have where somebody needs your help, or all those things that happen in the day-to-day. So if you're focused on everybody being maxed out every single working hour, then there is no space for learning in that. And I think that's why this conversation is, even brand new companies which are built by founders who've got great ideals and want to start with a brilliant culture from the ground up, they soon get to a point where they're having to max people out completely. That's a common pattern that I see.
We invested so much in these machines, right? In these resources. So they need to run. Yeah, that's this way of thinking. I see this a lot, actually. So if this is like the problem space, if we switch a little bit to the solution space, what could you actually do to promote learning in organizations?
So there's a few things. The first is really buying the time for that learning to happen. So you're going to need a level of engagement from the people who are leading to all this busyness happening, and oftentimes just the visualization of that is enough for people to go, hold on a second, there's no way we're going to do all this work. So that ties back into understanding the capacity and the capability to execute by visualizing all of that. Additionally to that, Jose and I talk about these kind of 3 different ways of engaging. So there's going high, which is engaging with senior leadership. I know ideally you want this to be C-level executives. That's not always possible, because the people you're working with might not have that influence. They might be very distant, but the highest you can go and run sessions with them that allow them to explore what's in it for them and why. And very shallow lessons, not like, here is really, really in-depth analysis of what it's like to be agile, because agile's not the end game for them. That's just kind of like a capability. Agility is actually. Then we've got to make sure that we go wide as well. So what often happens when we're working, we might be brought in by the product organization or by the tech organization. And for various different reasons, like silos and relationships, just traditional ways of working, that means you can end up stuck in that one particular area when actually those functions don't operate as an island. So what can you do to spread curiosity in the company around what's happening? And there are some things that we've tried in the past that have been successful. So one particularly fun one is something we call Business Agility Cinema, where we curated a large number of videos, usually kind of 3 minutes to 15 minutes. So sort of max would be a TED talk kind of thing length.
Nice.
And getting people to you either play these where people congregate, or you get them sent out on a regular cadence to people's inboxes. And you will have like a curated theme. So you might do one thing which is all about, let's just take an example. I don't know, maybe kind of flow thinking rather than resource utilization thinking, or something along those lines. And once that's happened, you offer a lean coffee where people can come together and discuss what they've learned, or what it means to them, and so on. And that you'll soon find out who the curious are in the organization, because they're the ones that turn up to the lean coffee regularly. And there might be that might be fertile ground for future work, when going further. Providing things like lunch and learn sessions, another one as well. Who turns up to that? What are people interested in? seen people wandering around the offices with like, large whiteboards on wheels and having conversations around these things. What's that all about?
Nice.
So that's another one, is going wide, and the other one is going deep. And that's the one that normally happens, which is, oh, let's train a bunch of people. But it's kind of more than that, actually, because one of the challenges that we see is that typically people will bring in an expert, get them to train a bunch of people, the expert goes. And or maybe they've got a very short coaching engagement afterwards.
Yeah.
What happens when the expert leaves the office, leaves the building, right? So it's like, okay, right, well, we don't know, we've got no one to ask, we just revert back to what we were going to do.
Switch back to normal.
Yeah. So you need to create experts across the organization who can actually maintain what's going on. You've got to give them the skills so they can also make other experts as well.
Yeah.
And this is something that it's something that we're massive advocates of, and I think sometimes gets overlooked. Just subject matter expert, it doesn't mean that they're great at training and explaining things.
Yeah, most likely they are not, actually. Yeah. This is very cool tips. I want to ask a follow-up question, actually. So you said, okay, we want to start high, bring senior management leadership on board. What's actually their role in all what you just said? Is it just like, okay, here's the money, have fun, and do whatever you think makes sense? Or what is the leadership role, the management role in everything we were just talking about?
So being seen is a really important part. One of another common challenge that we run into, and I'm sure this will try and resonate with you as well, Klaus, is when people go, okay, we want you to come in and make the company agile or the organization agile. Now go off and you lot go off and be agile. And leadership requires people to take a lead, right? So you want them to have an opinion, have an understanding of what's going on, and also demonstrate that themselves. And oftentimes the reason that people don't have that space to learn is because senior leaders are they don't have that feedback loop of, well, how much work can people take on? And so they'll say, okay, right, well, we had a shareholder meeting the other day, and it was decided that we needed to achieve these results, so we need to launch another initiative, which is easily said, right? But if you've already got 6, 7, 8 initiatives in progress, which has turned into more work than the entire company can do in 3 years, and another initiative gets launched, that you're not going to see the results on that for 5, 6 years. It's just crazy. So it's about helping leaders understand the consequences of their decisions in that respect, give them the tools that they need to do that. That's certainly how they can help, is buying the space and understanding that also whenever any change is happening, to start with, there's a slight dip in performance, but that's just the way that it is, right? So you start somewhere.
I like this a lot. So let's assume you've worked with such an organization and they built up these learning capabilities, and then you went away and you come back a year later or something like this, or you start a new engagement at the company. How can you tell if there is a learning organization already there? So what are the symptoms? What are the things that you see, that you observe, that there is something like learning going on in this organization?
So the most concrete example I can talk about with this is, there was a company that we worked at where they, after we had left, actually the business agility cinema, as I described it at the time, it was I think we called it 30 videos in 30 days or something. They, after we left, they carried it on, but without us seeding it. So they were choosing different topics they wanted to do, and they carried that on. And they carried on having their lean coffees. Actually, whilst we're in the middle of the engagement, we started off by facilitating the first 2 or 3. And then once some people had figured out what it was all about, we just then were observers who could help out if the facilitators brought us in to help. The rest of the time we just kind of sat back, and if somebody asked us a question, we'd answer, but quite,
Yeah.
like a pull system for us rather than us pushing ourselves onto the organization. But also just change. So, have they set up some board that represents flight level 2? Is it exactly the same as when you were last here? And if it is exactly the same, then why is it exactly the same? Have they formulated their perfect working system, or have they just stopped operating it properly? New people come in and they've not required you to get them up to speed with working, right? So they're given opportunities to explore new ideas and figure out the way the company works, and they're being successful in doing that. They're not having to just be yet another training course to get them up to speed. So and so their onboarding process deals with all of that as well.
Yeah.
Again, with onboarding, there are a number of times where I've gone either as a consultant or a new employee into a company, and onboarding is, well, here are the people you need to know in HR. There's your manager. Good luck.
Yeah.
It's not the best situation to be in.
Yeah, sure. And did you also observe when you were working with organizations? I mean, it's a rhetorical question, but resistance. So was everybody totally happy and and like, yes, that's exactly what we want to do? As I said, it's a rhetorical question, maybe not. But what do you do to deal with this resistance?
Well, I mean, this is it's the evergreen topic of change, or is resistance.
Yes.
So one way of thinking about this actually is reframing resistance a little bit. You are going to have people who are genuinely resistant. You are going to have people who are just experiencing cognitive dissonance. So their worldview's here. They've been shown that actually maybe their worldview needs to be over there, or it's not they've been shown, that they've been presented with the possibility that their worldview could be over here. And they've actually just got like this cognitive moment they're trying to get through, which eventually will snap through to there. And you've got to give people time and the space to do that. You may actually have resistance because what is being proposed is a crazy idea. And so if you maintain curiosity, you may find that out. I certainly know that sometimes when I run into resistance, my initial thought is, well, what is this? Why is this person not getting this? When really the question is, what is this person getting that I'm not?
Yeah.
So there's an element there. The final thing is we can often bury a ton of energy into people who are being resistant for various reasons. And actually, if we put that energy into the people who are most receptive and actually demonstrate what's what could be possible, then oftentimes that will help persuade people who are being somewhat resistant that maybe there's an option there, maybe there's an idea there that's interesting to follow. Those are I think really a lot of times with resistance is about reframing your own response rather than dealing with the resistance, if you see what I mean. Like resistance head on. It's more, why am I, as the consultant, the coach, however you want to describe yourself, feeling this as resistance, and what am I going to do about it, rather than how can I change these folk because they're wrong.
Yeah, I like this a lot, actually. I really like it a lot. So when some of our listeners maybe are somehow tempted to say, okay, I like this idea of a learning organization. I would like to use flight levels as a tool, kind of, which can bring me closer to in this learning mode. When you are starting out, what are your tips that you can give our listeners? I don't know, one or two of the major or most important things when you actually start your journey with flight levels to become a learning organization.
So one of the one of the main things is actually getting people to experience it as quickly as possible, because it sounds really abstract otherwise. We talk about kind of coordination and strategy, and these are really, really abstract things to a lot of people. So get people experiencing that some way, as quickly as possible, and with purpose as well. So what are you hoping to achieve by getting people to experience this? So, for example, running a simulation or something on those lines, which it gives enough so people can start having those light bulb moments, those aha moments about things. So that's one thing. Another is getting people in a room talking and visualizing what they mean, right? So, even just what kinds of work do we do? How does that flow through amongst us? How do we work with each other? The great one that I love doing is getting all the teams in the room to write on a sticky what team it is that they work for, and they put all these on a whiteboard and then go, right, join the dots. So everybody gets a white, and it just ends up looking, well, it's like Gordian knot thing. It just ends up looking like a mess, plate of spaghetti or something, right? And you go, all right, well, that's how you communicate. And he stands back and they giggle a bit nervously to start with, and then they say, "Oh, well, how can we improve this?" So it just visualization is just such a powerful tool to just kick all conversations off. It's brilliant.
That is true. So visualization, so it's a lot about building awareness. So visualization in itself is not so important. It's a means to an end. But without visualization, it's really tough, I think, because everything is totally abstract and so on. And as you said, like this dependency kind of chart, or however you want to call it. Just to see something like this is somehow blowing the mind of many people. And what I also liked a lot when you said, okay, experience something very early. And I think that's one of the things when it comes to flight levels, what we really try to do in all our workshops and training programs. So it's not a slide cinema for 2 days and teaching you some abstract kind of things. We are always working with real life case studies. So people bring in their cases, even in the public workshop. I mean, if you are doing this like with your customer, of course, you have the cases, but even in public workshops, we bring in real cases and we work with the real cases. And I think this is really where the magic happens, because, I mean, slides are great as long as they hit reality, and then you need to see what you do out of it. So I'm really a huge fan of what you just said, like this, making people, experience actually what's going on.
No, it's important. I mean, it is important. You've got to give people the scaffolding on which to hang that experience, the scaffolding on which to run those case studies beforehand, because otherwise it's a bit like giving somebody 500 pages of paper and saying, write a book. Right? It's like, well,
exactly.
How many pages do you?
I mean, you know how to write, so
but
where's the problem?
Figure it out. It'll be fine. Where you've got to give people enough knowledge to be working with, and that's really the point is, well, here is something new for you to think about. Now let's apply it. Now what does that look like? Let's have some conversation, some debrief around that. So
that makes sense. Cool. Thank you for your time, JP. I guess these were really nice closing words. So dear listeners, if you want to connect with JP, we will put his coordinates into our show notes. So if you think, you want to ask him some questions, want to get in contact with him to help you build a learning organization with flight levels, you will be covered with his contact information in the show notes. And I think that's it for today. JP, thank you so much for your time. We see us the next time somewhere in London, if this is correct, right?
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, Klaus. Be
Perfect.
April 2024. This won't date well, but yeah, looking forward to the house. Thank you very much for having me.
Cool. Thank you, JP, and goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Flight Levels podcast. Subscribe now to be updated for the next episode. Did this podcast remind you of anybody? Share the link with that person that you think should also join the Flight Club. And join our free community to have access to a lot of free content as well as direct contact with all the coaches and members. Visit our web to create your account and more information. Go to flightlevels.io.